Finland, home to unbreakable cell phones, a gazillion lakes, saunas, some cute trolls, and every song in the world. This is the history of Finland. Let's begin with something peculiar. This is the map. Here is Scandinavia, comprised of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and here's Russia. The languages of these countries belong to the Indo-European group of languages. You would assume Finland also would have a similar language, right? As you already see, that is not the case. Finnish is in the Finno-Ugric language group. This also includes Estonian, which kind of makes sense as they're sort of like Finland's little sister, as well as Hungarian. This can give us some insight into Finland's history. The language link with Hungary is estimated to have been lost about 6,000 years ago, but Finland's history goes back even further. Findings from the last interglacial period more than 100,000 years old. But like the rest of the Nordics, the area got covered in ice when the warm period ended. When the ice eventually retracted, people started moving back in again. And now let's try to figure out why the language is different from the neighbors. Most likely originating in the Pontic steppes, the Indo-European culture spread throughout Europe over several thousand years. The culture is likely to have spread by technological advancements with domestication of cattle and horses. As you can see on this language map, Finland, Estonia and Hungary are sort of the oddballs out. Recent genetic research show that the Uralic-speaking populations share DNA and are likely from a common ancestor originating in Siberia. Then we can start to imagine a possible migration pattern. It should be noted that there were more historic Uralic settlements and people group that have later been assimilated by, for example, the Russians. Based on the genetic evidence, it is likely that the Finns had a different migration pattern compared to, for example, the Swedes, and thus a different language. When the Indo-European cultural influence arrived, this didn't affect the language to a great extent, but the Finns do have several loanwords from Germanic. So in essence, the Finns didn't change their language, but they did adopt the agriculture that came with the Indo-Europeans. Parts of the Nordics stayed away from agriculture, and they kinda still do, the Sami people. The Sami language shares the same proto-language as the Finns, Proto-Uralic. The early Finnish history is quite blurry, but there are indications that there were one or more kingdoms in the area. The first written mention of the land of the Finns, or Finland, are 2 runestones. These runestones were made by Swedish Vikings, and it is believed that the Swedes both raided and traded with the tribes or kingdoms in Finland. The Swedes likely also founded trading settlements along the coast of Finland. Some centuries after the Viking Age, Sweden had become a Christian country, while Finland was still pagan. Under the excuse of a crusade, Eric the Holy put parts of Finland under Swedish rule around 1150 in what is referred to as the First Crusade. The Crusades defeated the Finns, and they were force converted. Swedish settlers and priests moved in. One of them was the Uppsala bishop named Henrik, who was quickly killed, becoming a martyr, and would later become Finland's patron saint. 2 more crusades against the Tavastians and Karelians followed, and the proper founder of Swedish dominion of Finland was Birger Jarl. By advances in 1249, he pushed the Swedish border further east. Sweden would see several conflicts with the Novgorod Republic, provoking the Swedes to push even further east, and founding the castle of Viborg in 1293. Many believe the Finns were actually Christian long before the Swedish Crusades. This means that the Crusades likely were an excuse to invade Finland. I mean, who doesn't like a Pope-approved war? In the Treaty of Nöteborg, a border was agreed between Sweden and Novgorod, formalizing the Swedish dominion over Finland. The following century was marked by the great lords who often ruled Finland as their private domain. While there could be long periods of peace, bloody border battles against the Russians occurred from time to time, often only confirming the status quo, but affecting the Finns negatively as the conflicts often took place on their land. In the beginning, these conflicts were with the Novgorod Republic, and then later with their conqueror, the Grand Duchy of Moscow, the predecessor to modern-day Russia. As a part of Sweden, Finland came under the control of the Kalmar Union and later the Danish king Christian II. Finns supported Gustav Vasa's rebellion against Christian's regime in Sweden, and after the recapture of Stockholm in 1523, the Danes were driven out of Finland. At the Riksdag in Västerås in 1527, the road was open for a reformation in Finland as well. The center of gravity of the administration was moved to Finland, and crown land was created to make the royal domains more lucrative. Trade and shipping were promoted by a regulation of 1550, which also mandated the founding of Helsinki. During a war with Ivan the Terrible in 1555–57, King Gustav Vasa made Finland a duchy and gave it to his son, Johan III.
Hello there.
An uneasy period followed. The nobility suppressed the farmers and led constant feuds with the Russians, and while Sweden in general saw both territorial gain and losses, Finland did for the most part expand their borders. Under the influence of the precarious conditions in Sweden, the Finnish peasants rose into a rebellion, but suffered a bloody defeat in the Club War of 1596–97. During the rule of Karl IX, a new section began in Finland's history. The governance was centralized in Stockholm, and uniform taxation and administration was introduced throughout the Swedish realm. The material development went faster than before, and at the Treaty of Stolbovo in 1617, the border with Russia was secured by the incorporation of Kexholmslen at Ladoga. The Finns participated in the 30-year war with large contingents in the Swedish forces. Finland suffered the pressure of the discharge and hard taxes. When the tight centralization in Stockholm proved to be not very effective, the Guardian government ruled by Kristina, Queen of Sweden, placed Per Brahe as general governor in Finland. During this reform period, several central Finnish administrative agencies were established, and the country's first university was founded in Turku in 1640. Bad harvests in the period 1695–97 led to about a fourth of the population dying, and not before Finland had regained their strength, Karl XII would throw them into the Great Northern War. Here, Peter the Great of Russia would conquer all of Finland in 1713 till 1716, and the war ended with a loss of land to the Russians. Finland was not happy about this, and thoughts of independence increased, especially among the Finnish nobility. To protect against Russian expansionism, the island fortress of Sveaborg or Suomenlinna, Castle of Finland, were founded in 1749. The fortress didn't stop the Russians though. Sweden got involved in the Napoleonic Wars against France. As an ally to Napoleon, Tsar Alexander of Russia invaded Finland without any declaration of war. Sweden lost all of Finland to the Russians. Finland was now the Grand Duchy of Finland. The Russian rule over Finland would see a varying degree of freedom, ranging from making printing books in Finnish illegal to making the Finnish language equal to Swedish. Up till this point, the Finnish language was considered a peasant language, while Swedish was spoken by the nobles. This period is in general considered a prosperous period for Finnish culture and art. One example is Elias Lönnrot, who wrote what is considered the Finnish national epic, the Kalevala, based on Finnish folklore. However, all were not a dance on roses. The Russians did their best to Russificate Finland, and Finnish resistance just led to more Russification. The Russians were defeated in the Russo-Japanese War, which led to internal unrest in Russia. The Finns exploited this and established the Parliament of Finland, as well as universal suffrage. A wave of revolutions, often infused with nationalism, spread across Europe. The Russian Empire was not spared, and it collapsed in 1917 with the emperor abdicating. Finland used this opportunity to gain their independence as the Kingdom of Finland. Wait, that's not right? Enter Civil War, the Reds versus the Whites. And just a spoiler alert in case this becomes the next Marvel movie or something. But the Whites won, shifting Finland from Russia's sphere of influence to Germany's. So in 1919, Finland was now the Republic of Finland. In addition, the Åland Islands were given to Finland as a demilitarized and self-governed area. Finland oriented themselves politically to the other Nordics with social reforms including welfare and a policy of neutrality. However, during World War II, Finland's neutrality soon ran into problems. The German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact radically changed Finland's international position. The Soviets issued several territorial demands, but the Finns refused to give up any land, and on the 30th of November 1939, the Soviets led a massive offensive into Finland. This war should have been a walk in the park for the material superior Soviets. However, this was not the case, due to several factors, such as not being properly equipped for snow, inexperienced officers, and too much trust on the effectiveness of mechanized troops. The Finns managed to put up a good fight, utilizing their knowledge of the terrain and speed to damage supply lines and cut deep wounds into the Soviet flanks.
Run.
Finnish fortitude and resistance aside, the Soviet war machine was too great a foe, and the Finns lost the war and large amounts of land, including Viborg, the second largest Finnish city at the time. This defeat led Finland closer to Germany, and when they attacked the Soviets in 1941, the Finnish army joined the offensive. They managed to take back their land without much difficulty, but they never broke the important Murmansk Bank, which was crucial for the Soviets' connection with the Allied powers. When the Allies turned the war in their favor, Finland soon found themselves on the losing side and signed peace with Moscow in 1944, ceding land and paying war reparations to Russia as a result. They also declared war on Germany, forcing the German troops out of the country. In order to pay their war reparations, which were to be paid in goods, Finland expanded their metal industry. The Finns also needed to provide new land for all the displaced people after the war, as well as having promised land to various people, such as soldiers. When this was completed in 1955, 56,000 families had gotten new homes, but this fragmentation of land would result in problems for the Finnish agriculture. Diplomacy-wise, Finland would enter a treaty of friendship, cooperation, and mutual assistance with the Soviet Union. This improved the relationship with the Soviet Union. Hello, Captain Obvious. However, it had some negative implications, such as Finland having to refuse martial aid. Finland would maintain this treaty with the Soviets until its collapse in 1991. The Finns managed to join the UN in 1955, despite the Soviets trying to prevent this by using their veto right. Finland shifted politically back and forth from left to right, and especially during the 70s, there were several political crises. This was in essence caused by disagreement on how to solve economic issues. Some of the economic issues Finland faced was high inflation and unemployment, and they struggled paying their foreign debt. The collapse of the Soviet Union would be an economic thorn, as their trade deal with them ensured exports of between 25 to 30%. Despite these issues, Finland's GDP saw growth overall until the 90s, where stagnation in growth led to the worst depression since World War II. It would be gradually resolved by cost cuts in public spending, as well as devaluation of their currency to benefit exports. After much internal debate, they finally joined the EU in 1995. The following years would see impressive growth in their GDP. In 2020, Finland ranked first in the UN's list of happiest countries in the world, and their education system is celebrated in great esteem and is considered as one of the best in the world. While their GDP is lower compared to their Scandinavian neighbors, Finland's economy receives much praise for its competitiveness and growth potential. In essence, the future looks bright for Finland. The oddball out. Nordic, but not Scandinavian. Dominated by stronger neighbors, but with a will to fight unlike no other. Finally, freedom, prosperity, and perhaps even greatness. That was the history of Finland. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, please carry on.